Good evening, Cuse Nation, and welcome to the Upstate Orange Podcast on FingerLakes1.tv and YouTube. We're coming at you live inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. It's Sunday, February 15th, 2015, and tonight we'll be talking about Syracuse's loss to Duke on Saturday in the Dome. And can the Orange get to 20 wins before the regular season and, unfortunately, Syracuse's season comes to an end? The Upstate Orange Podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank, with locations in Auburn, Farmington, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. And by Midday, Miris and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. That's 315-568-0911, or visit them online at middaymirrosricky.com. Well, as if you listened in last week, you know that one of our co-hosts, Verk, was going to be down in William & Mary at his alma mater this week, taking in some basketball with some former teammates, unable to be here tonight. But fortunately, I'm not alone, as I have been a couple times this season. I'm joined by the Professor, Brad Connor. How you doing, Brad?
Happy Sunday evening, Jim.
And I don't know what the weather like is in Cincinnati, but it is -8 out right now, and I'm a little concerned about getting home from the studio safely tonight. What's the weather like in Cincinnati?
It is a brisk 11 degrees.
Wow, that's
Cincinnati
balmy.
tonight.
Balmy. And kudos to the 34,000-something fans that were at the Dome yesterday for Duke. It was pretty nasty out yesterday afternoon as well. But Orange Nation still turned out. You know, the team's on probation, self-imposed probation, and just as many people as you can legally fit in that Dome were there. Same amount as last year when we were, riding the undefeated streak.
Yeah, that was impressive. I mean, the fact that obviously this team is a different version than what we saw last year. I mean, last year this team was number one in the country. Last year the Duke game was, frankly a spectacle. You know, they'd never played Duke in the Carrier Dome, and it was just sort of an event. And this year it was frankly just another game, but it was a great game and a big game, and people still love to see it, even though we know how the season's going to end.
Yeah, and you know what? I was really proud of the way we played, and I feel bad for Rat Christmas, and I feel bad for the whole team. That's kind of one I think we needed if we were going to get to 20 wins, which I think is really one of the only goals that this team has left this year, is to get to that 20-win mark, as Mayheim seems to do year in and year out. But I guess we'll talk all about it with our Big Five questions. And we'll start out with the first question of the week, and that was Raheem Christmas outplayed by Duke's Okafor? And I think the answer to that is pretty obvious, except with the caveat of I just feel like it was just a tough shooting day for Rack. He had so many shots kind of roll in and out that he normally makes, and I really think he played a good game. People are saying, well, Christmas had one of his poorest games of the year. I didn't see that. I saw him playing a good game. He purposely wasn't contesting as many shots early as you might think he would if we had a little more help on the bench, or if like Jeremy Grant or DeJuan Coleman were on the team. And I thought Christmas played a good game and just had a tough shooting night. I don't know. Is that how you see it, Brad?
Well, yeah. I mean, to your first question, there's no question that Okafor outplayed Raheem Christmas, and Okafor is one of the best freshmen in the country, if not one of the best players in the country. So that's nothing to hang your head over. I would say, Christmas was 5 for 17 from the field. I will say that I'm not going to completely chalk that up to just bad luck. I think Duke played him very, very well inside. Defensively, they played him as well as you can play Rakeem Christmas, I think. They didn't let him catch it deep as frequently as he does against some of these lesser teams. When he turned, he'd always had a guy in his face. He had guys flying at him. Like I think they game planned very, very well for Rakeem Christmas, and I think a lot of the shooting woes he had were attributable to the defense. Now, I mean, there were some shots that were in and out, but I mean, he was short on everything, and at some point you have to just, you know, as a player, if you have that tendency, then you make the adjustment, and to me, it felt like they were forcing him into shots that he wasn't comfortable taking, and by result, he wasn't succeeding.
Yeah, obviously you got to give Duke some credit. Like I say, though, I just felt that if it was another day, Rack would have had 18, 20 points. But it wasn't.
I think where I was disappointed with him was on the rebounding. He only came away with 6 rebounds. That you need more rebounds from Rakeem Christmas, definitely in a game like this, especially when Duke's they're putting up a lot of shots and there was a lot of back and forth, and Roberson had another great rebounding night. But Christmas had as many rebounds as Gbinije, and I shouldn't expect that from a guy who is a potential first team All-American center. His assist total was as high as we've seen. He was great. Finding open guys and at the top of the key, and he was distributing very, very well, but he wasn't as active on the rebounds. That was a bit disappointing to me. I mean, the shots aren't going to fall, but the rebounding can always be there, and that was one kind of, Okafor had 13 rebounds, so he was definitely getting it done on the glass.
And not only 5 of 17 from the field, but 1 of 3 from the line too, which is also a little worse than you expect. He had a couple of key free throws late that we could have used. I'm not about to put this loss on Rat Christmas, but yeah, if he kind of does what he has been doing all year, then I think we win that game. And it's the frustrating thing about this team is that we can play a top 5 team. This is 2 top 10 teams we've played right down to the wire, basically, Villanova and Duke, and but yet we're have 9 losses and obviously banned from the postseason. But if we weren't banned, we'd be squarely on the bubble. But that's kind of the college basketball this year, Brad. I mean, Pittsburgh beat North Carolina, Louisville lose. I mean, the ACC especially just seems to be a lot of parity outside of everybody but Virginia.
Yeah, it sort of seems that way. It does. I would agree. There's with the mid-tier of the ACC, the bottom of the ACC is bad, and I don't think anybody can argue that. But I do think that you're seeing the mid-tier of the ACC occasionally winning some of those games. There are very few, extraordinary teams. Virginia is, I think. Duke can be, and I think generally speaking are. Louisville, I'm not. It comes and goes with them. Carolina, obviously, same thing. Notre Dame, I mean, you don't lose by 30 to a conference foe and say you're playing at your peak level. So I think there's definitely wins to be had out there. It's I think Syracuse can come away with 1 or 2 of those types of victories down the stretch. It's just they just struggle down in late games. They just do.
Tired. A lot of it's fatigue.
We've been lucky that they haven't over the course of the last several years, and they've had good leaders and good go-to guys. And this year, the Villanova game comes to mind. Obviously, this one, the Carolina game, where it was close late, and it's kind of just let them pull away. It's maybe it's leadership, maybe it's just not having that sort of presence at the guard spot late games. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can kind of point to, but it's just that they struggle against good teams in the late game.
Well, you mentioned a go-to guy, and we talk about Gbinije's amazing game, and that brings us to the question, too, and that is Michael Gbinije our go-to guy next year? Is he like the prototypical Boeheim senior leader? I mean, he looks to me like he is. He was the best player on the court yesterday, maybe, and that includes Okafor and everybody for Duke, I thought. He was outstanding.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. They went away from him in the second half. He didn't look for a shot as much, I thought, in the second half. First half, he was tremendous, and then late game he was able to get to the rim pretty easily a couple of times. He can be that guy. You heard the announcers, Billis and Schulman. I mean, they're saying straight up that Gbinije should be the point guard of this team next year and should be the leader of this team, and I don't disagree. I think that and I've said it for weeks. This team goes as he goes. You know, he's kind of the glue guy, but he's kind of the guy that is, you know, when he does well, the team can rally behind him, and when he does poorly, the team collectively, I think, struggles.
Yeah, well, you know, on this show we try to like say, oh, this player reminds me of that player and this player, and you know, Gbinije, I haven't been able to make a connection with him until yesterday. When I was watching him yesterday, I said, you know who he reminds me of? Lawrence Moten. Gbinije reminds me of Moten. High praise, right?
Yesterday's game, I would agree. In yesterday's game, I would agree. I mean, you know, Lawrence Moten was as smooth a shooter as they've had, and you know, Gbinije, the way he's knocking down threes, that's.
He's
smooth.
I'm
shocked when I see him, you know, as proficient as he's been from the 3-point arc, but. I don't know. Moten's one of the best players in the history of this program.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that Gbinije's legacy will be there.
I saw a lot of Wes Johnson in him last night, actually.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, too. I just think the way he seems like Moten to almost move at half speed but get full speed results. You watch him and you're like, you know, he doesn't seem to be he seems to be ultra under control out there, which is something he didn't look like earlier in the year. And scoring from a variety of places, whether it's a pull-up jumper, whether it's taking it to the hole or shooting a three. The only thing I don't want to see him do anymore is try for those highlight reel dunks because they never seem to work out for him.
He seems to always miss those, doesn't he?
But yeah, you know, I mean,
he's kind of the anti-Caleb Joseph right now. Like Caleb Joseph will give you high energy and he'll be all over the place, and in a game like against BC, he'll produce. But yeah, I mean, you want him to be steady and consistent, and that's what we're getting from Gbinije.
Yeah, and then next year, obviously, that is going to be a necessity, I think. And, you know, we know about the great recruits coming in, but if history has taught us anything as Syracuse fans, it's that don't believe the hype on the recruits. Let's look at guys that we have, you know, right here in front of us now, because they're the ones that are probably going to play a key role next year. So we got Gbinije coming back and looking like he's ready to step up and be that leadership type of guy. That all-American type of guy, and that's good. That's good. And
yeah, I mean this team needs leadership. We've said it from the beginning. And as much as Rakeem Christmas has tried to be that guy, it's tough for a center to be your team leader, and you know, it just doesn't have the ball in his hand enough. And I think Gbinije is a guy that can have the ball in his hand every possession next year, and certainly down the stretch this year. And those are the kinds of guys. You know, if they have a voice for themselves and they can, you know, rally the team, I think those are the guys that their teammates look toward, and really that is the biggest void in this team for next year, that I think Gbinije can be that guy.
Yeah, let's hope so. And, you know, a lot of what we're going to be doing on the way out here on the podcast these last few weeks are going to be talking about next year. And so that brings me to question 3, and that's Tyler Roberson, finally a sophomore, has stepped up and established themselves as a perennial force for the Orange. And, you know, Roberson, I get excited when thinking about what he's going to be like next year after another summer, you know, of work and growth and development. And he was phenomenal yesterday against some of the better big men in the country. You know, Tyler Roberson. Is he ready next year to dominate?
He was as aggressive last night offensively as I've seen him obviously in 2 years. I mean, he was attacking the basket. He was going after everything. He was everywhere. It was fantastic to see. I loved that version of Tyler Roberson. I didn't like the version of Tyler Roberson I saw against BC, the one that played 11 minutes and missed both his shots and had 1 point and 4 rebounds in 11 minutes. I didn't like that version.
But I'd rather see him rise to the occasion against Duke than
against a team like BC, that he should at least do what he did against Duke. So there's an effort thing there with him. I don't think he necessarily brings it night after night after night, and hopefully there's a maturity thing that improves itself next year. I don't know. He's got all the athletic ability and he's got the skill, and
I think it's a comfort level.
If he can be that guy, then yeah. I mean, you could certainly expect 15 and 10 from him every night.
Yeah, and I think it's a comfort level. I think he's starting to reach that comfort level and feeling comfortable in the zone on defense, and, you know, not being second guessing himself on every move he makes on offense. He still, had passing up wide open jumpers from, 16, 17 feet. And when he did take one yesterday, it was short, as he tends to be. But man, what a beast on the rebounds, and what a beast finishing yesterday in close, and especially with Christmas struggling. Now maybe Brad, part of that's because they were paying so much attention to Christmas, but regardless, I am really excited about Roberson. So
it's a little bit pick your poison, I guess, but yeah, I mean he obviously has it in him, and if he decides he wants to be a dominant force inside, I think it's truly up to him.
Yeah, and I like you say, another summer. I should be even more improvement. I think next year he's ready to go for what will be his junior year. And speaking of improvement, how about Caleb Joseph? Do you feel like he's improving? Because I feel like he's improving. I feel like he's got a long way to go. Still can't understand why he can't close out on shooters on defense. But overall, I feel a little more comfortable with Caleb out there, and I can see a world where we enter next year with him as our starting point guard, but he needs to continue to improve this year, and then obviously improve in the offseason. What do you think? You think he's improving?
I think he is. I mean, it would be hard not to. He came in and didn't really do much at all, so every little bit you get from him, every bit of learning that he has, it just makes him that much more valuable this year and next year. And he shows glimpses, right? I mean, he obviously played a great game against BC. Took a bit of a step back last night, but that's going to happen. I mean, Duke's got elite guards, and there's it'd be hard to expect him to outplay those guys. But if he picks his spots, if he doesn't try and do too much, and he lets the game come to him, I think he can. He's getting better. I think the defensive end is where he struggles. And, I thought a couple times last night, like, if somebody makes a three in his area of the zone, Boeheim just lays into him every time.
Oh yeah.
While some of them I think are Caleb Joseph's fault, like he's not getting out on shooters, not making the rotation. Sometimes they just make a shot, and Caleb Joseph hears about it all the time. Like he can't catch a break on defense. And granted, some of that's on him, but I think some of it. I mean, if the same exact situation, Trevor Cooney doesn't rotate quickly enough, he's not hearing the same thing that Caleb Joseph is.
No, you're
like,
right.
You're right. I think he's sort of a punching bag a little bit for Boeheim on the frustration he sees on the defensive end. Like I think he just takes it out on Caleb Joseph a bit more than most for some reason.
Yeah, we
always has that guy,
Yeah, he always has somebody, one or two guys that. But I gotta admit that the first half when he got pulled, when he left the guy open in the corner, I mean that's just. He was confused, It's not like he's intentionally trying to leave guys open, but he had to make a choice between the guy in the corner and the other guy. But Cooney was rotating for the guy in the wing, and he should have stayed in the corner, but he gave him wide open three and buried it.
Yeah. But in the second half, the same thing happened. He made the rotation. He was on up the top of the key, and he busted it off to the left wing, and he got there, I thought, and they hit a shot over his outstretched arm, and so Boeheim lit into him again.
Yeah, it did. Well, trial by fire, hopefully he learns from this and gets better, and then we're going to...
Boeheim used to do the same with Rakeem Christmas, and he did the same with Tyler Roberson.
Yeah.
Remember Rakeem Christmas as a freshman, boy, he couldn't catch the same thing. He couldn't catch a break. Anytime anybody scored on the inside, he was getting into Christmas like nobody's business. And now he's the best center in the country, one of the top 3 or 4 centers in the country.
Yeah, you remember him when he would come out? He would start and come out, almost immediately every single game.
He'd make that one mistake, and a minute later he's gone. You don't see him again until after halftime.
Yeah, well, let's move on to question 5, and this is the big one for me because this is kind of what I'm thinking of heading forward is the team's goal, and that's, can we win 20 games? Boeheim's known for winning 20 games year in and year out, and we need to win 4 more to get there. And I look at our schedule, we could maybe not win any, but we maybe could win 4. We got Louisville on Wednesday at home, then we go at Pitt. Or no, Pitt's in the Dome, so we got 2 home games, Louisville and Pitt to start. Then we go at Notre Dame, at Duke, then Virginia in the Dome, and then at NC State. And I can't look at any one of those games and say it's a sure win, and I can't look at, although I could look at any game in the whole schedule this year and say it's a sure win, but it is a tall task. Can we win 4 of these last 6 and be a 20-win team at least in this kind of lost season?
I don't see how that's even in the realm of possibility. I really don't, as much as I would love to. Like I've been doing the math on this for a while because I was wondering the same thing, and you're sort of pointing to games that look like they could be wins, and then you sort of see at Duke and you see at Notre Dame and you see UVA, and you just shrug your shoulders. How can they do any of that when their best win this year is against Iowa?
Yeah.
How does this team beat a good team? Because they haven't done it yet. They honestly have not done it yet. Iowa's 15-10 or 16-10. They're not a good team.
Right.
What's the second best win this team has?
Oh,
Georgia Tech, Florida State.
Did we lost
BC,
Miami?
Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I mean, here's their wins in the ACC so far. They beat BC twice. They beat Virginia Tech twice. They beat Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest in overtime. That is not a good list of victories right there. They haven't beaten anybody good. They beat Long Beach. They beat Cornell. They beat Colgate, Louisiana Tech, Holy Cross. I mean, there's nothing to hang your hat on here.
Barely
nothing.
Beat Louisiana Tech in the Dome.
And we expect that same, Louisiana Tech by 2. We're lucky.
But don't you feel like that's the thing that's crazy, though, is that, we survive against Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech and at the Dome, play all these close games, and then we go to Villanova and give it away, and then take a top 5 team like Duke or a team like Carolina and really play with them until the end. It just seems like it's got to be a fine line, and I wonder at this point in the season, how much they're missing Chris McCullough. He would have hopefully improved, as the games go on, just like Roberson and everybody else. You expect to improve a little bit, but they're so thin. They're so thin. It's hard.
Yeah.
It affects the way Christmas plays right off the opening tip yesterday. You could see him not contesting shots. If Jeremy Grant, DeJuan Coleman, are on the roster, they're helping from the weak side. Roberson and Christmas can be a little more aggressive, and I don't know. It's tough. It's very frustrating, though, because we've been in this golden age of Syracuse basketball, and now the bottom has just kind of dropped out of nowhere. And
it's a strange confluence of things, right? I mean, you got guys going pro that you didn't expect, and you've got guys getting injured, and DeJuan Coleman's been out for 2 years, and you got guys that legitimately haven't panned out. Ron Patterson, B.J. Johnson, and so it's all come together in this one kind of perfect storm of a season.
And throw in an NCAA investigation.
I fully expect that thing will flip right back on its ear, and they'll be back in the top 15 again.
Yeah, by Christmas time next year. Hopefully. But who knows? I'm scared because we're putting a lot of stock on these freshmen coming in. And like I said a few minutes ago, who knows with these guys? Paul Harris was supposed to be the next Carmelo Anthony. And you never know.
And Bam doesn't have 970 wins for nothing, right? I mean, he's able to get victories from and this team has never in Boeheim's career been, consistently one of the most talented teams in the country. I mean, they in a lot of years they do a lot with not very much, and unfortunately this year they just couldn't do it. And I think it starts with the guard play. It starts with your point guard. When they've got a freshman point guard who's literally not ready for the rigors of the ACC, then you see what happened.
Yeah, and Boeheim, and in most college basketball systems, but specifically Syracuse, that point guard's very important. We don't.
Trevor Cooney's not a guy that can create his own shot, and Christmas obviously needs a point guard to get it to him himself, get it to him in the right spots, and Roberson's not creating his own shot very, very effectively. I mean, last year you had C.J. Fair, who he could always create his own shot. You could just dump it to C.J. You knew he was going to make a good decision. You knew he was going to get to the basket.
Yeah, and when he commanded attention, then Jeremy Grant's crashing the board on the weak side, and then Tyler Ennis always had the ball. You were comfortable. I mean, they were great.
But they had guys who could execute on their own. They didn't need a supporting cast to be able to be successful, and I think this one kind of does.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, before we take our commercial break here, I just want to talk for a quick second about what a joke Boston College is. 5,000 something fans for Syracuse in the Conte Forum. I mean,
we could talk for an hour about this topic. Why did the ACC ever get Boston College in the first place? What do they add? What do they contribute to this league?
They like the geography of it, but it's a joke when you consider those 5,000 fans. At least half of them were Syracuse fans.
Yeah,
it's
such an awful atmosphere, and you've been there, and I mean we see it on TV. It's barely half full. It's the students aren't even anywhere to be found. I mean, and the team's awful. They're wearing these goofy uniforms from 1973. I mean, this is a joke. Everything's a joke about BC basketball.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't know what happened after the Craig Smith years, but they really fell right off the face, and they never capitalized any year that when they had great players like Dana Barros and Michael Adams, and they never Billy Curley. They never.
They'd have one or two good years, and then they'd fall on their face again for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and a good year.
Pretty long down cycle for them. I can't remember the last time they were even relevant.
In a good year for them, Chris Dudley, I think, Jared Dudley was pretty good when they had him. But even the best years for BC, you're talking about like a 15-ranked team that loses in the first or second round of the tournament. It's sad. They never did anything for the Big East. And they're certainly not doing anything for the ACC. And I fear for our program a little bit in the ACC that we're going to have similar effect of Boston College as a northern school. Now, our program's a lot stronger basketball than Boston College, so we have a lot more assets, I think, and we bring a lot more to the table. But still, I worry a little bit, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, what the basketball program at Syracuse is going to be like after this move to the ACC. But I guess only time will tell. But Brett,
did you see that the Notre Dame blog wrote something today about how they're questioning if the move to the ACC was any better for them, and how the ACC is proven to be a disappointment for them?
Yeah, well, they should shut up and come in for football too before they can say anything like that. Because
well, the general feedback is you should make a Sweet 16 since 1979.
Yeah, right.
Final 8. They've made 2 Sweet 16 since 1979. That's as far as they've gotten.
Yeah, from a basketball perspective,
until you can have some of your own success, and don't condemn anybody else.
Yeah, and from a basketball perspective, the move wasn't as good for Notre Dame or Syracuse or anybody. Basketball only. The Big East was just fine. So don't forget it was football, that drove a lot of this. And yeah, so I guess
Notre Dame shouldn't complain about that at all, because they're the ones that want their cake and eat it too on the football side.
True. Well, Brad, look, we're going to step aside for about 30 seconds, hear from our sponsors. When we come back, I'm sure you got some great trivia for us, so hang tight.
Find the partner you've been looking for. Welcome to Generations Bank.
The Newark Pilots. See tomorrow's Major League stars today. For more information, go to newarkpilots.com.
Call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. That's 315-568-0911. Madej, Maris, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. And welcome back to the Upstate Orange Podcast on FingerLakes1.tv and YouTube. Remember to subscribe on YouTube to FingerLakes1.com. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher.com. And you can browse directly to podcast.fingerlakes1.com/upstatehoops. You can subscribe to our feed there. Well, Brad, it's the time of the show where you ask our listeners, and usually me and Verk, tonight just me, trivia questions. Favorite part of the, one of my favorite 5-10 minutes of the week. So what do you got for us this week, Brad?
All right, we have Ricky Christmas. We talked about how he's been the leader of this team, and he's the leading scorer in this team right now. He's averaging 17.7 points per game, and it made me wonder, where would he fall amidst the top scoring seniors in the history of this program?
Well, that's a good question.
So we've seen guys who have had high scoring seasons, but in a lot of cases, if you're a top scorer, you're probably not sticking around until senior year, especially in this day and age. And and a guy who's shown the improvement of Rakeem Christmas, he's really sort of peaked this year, which is exactly what you'd expect from a senior. But think back to guys that have stuck around for 4 years and who your most prolific senior scorers have been.
Senior scorers, okay. Lawrence Moulton's got to be up there. Are we looking for guys that score more than Rakeem is averaging right now? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, so that's generally what the list I have in front of me here.
How many people are on that list?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys.
Boeheim era or all time?
That are at. This is all time.
Okay, well I'm going to start.
There aren't very many that are pre-Boeheim era.
One of them's got to be Dave Bing.
Dave Bing is correct. He averaged 28.4 as a senior, so he's got the highest scoring average of any senior in this program's history.
Okay, and then we got to have Lawrence Moulton in there.
Lawrence Moulton averaged 21.5 as a senior, so he's about 5th or 6th on this list.
Okay, so that's 2.
I didn't order the list as much as I should have, but
that's fine. We just got to see if we can name 9 of these guys. I'm going to go with John Wallace.
John Wallace is correct. He has the most points of any senior. Actually, he has the most points in one season of any player in Syracuse history.
Played a lot of games that year.
A lot of games that year in '96. Mm-hmm. He averaged 22.2 as points per game as a senior, and 845 points in that season. So he was third ranked on points per game.
Now things are going to get difficult, Brad. A little more difficult, but I'm going to say Jerry McNamara.
That is incorrect.
Yeah. Well, let me throw out another one there that I was going to guess with, and that's Hakeem Warwick. He had a great senior season.
Hakeem Warwick is a good guess. Yes, he had an excellent senior year. He averaged 21.4 points per game as a senior. So he's 4th or 5th on this list, it looks like.
So I think that we got 4 guys down, right? Or is that 5?
For the record, Jerry McNamara averaged only 16 points a game as a senior.
He was injured a lot. I mean, he had an injury hampered. He could have done better. How about Raphael Addison?
He's not on this list. I think as a junior, Raph Addison averaged 18.4. As a senior,
his senior year would have
17,
been
17, because Pearl Washington led the team in scoring that year with 17.
Yeah, and Pearl never had a senior year, of course.
Right.
Okay, now we got to search a little bit for some guys like, I'm going to go with Damone Brown.
No, incorrect.
No, all right. I kind of like that guess.
There's two guys. There's actually 3 guys on this list. 4 guys. I'm sorry. That would be our Boeheim era. That will, if the season ended today, would have higher points per game than Rakeem Christmas.
Sherman Douglas.
Other guys you could guess.
Sherman Douglas.
Douglas is correct.
Nice.
Sherman Douglas averaged 18.2 as a senior.
Now, I kind of want to say Derek Coleman, and I kind of want to say Billy Owens. I'm going to say Billy Owens went pro after his junior year, so he doesn't count.
Billy Owens did not play as a senior, correct?
Yeah, so we got Coleman, and I don't really have confidence in that one. I got to say Coleman. Let's get him out there.
Coleman is not.
Yeah.
So he did not average more than 17 as a senior.
Neither did Rick Jackson or Arinze Onuaku or Andy Routens or what about Leo Routens?
Incorrect.
Yeah, he did a 3-category stat guy.
He was never a huge scorer.
Yeah.
I mean, just a great all-around player and one of the best assist guys of anybody in the front court. But yeah, no, not a huge scorer.
Louis Orr.
Louis Orr is incorrect.
Roosevelt Bowie?
He was under 16 because Roosevelt Bowie led the team in scoring their senior year at 16.1.
So he's not the correct answer either.
No.
Jeez. Are all the remaining guys Boeheim era guys?
I mean, there's a couple that are pre-Boeheim, but you should. There's 2 or 3 more that are Boeheim era guys that you haven't named.
Yeah, now's where I get into this fog of just trying to go year by year and think of guys. And guys, I think about some of them I've come up with that they didn't have senior years; they went pro. I want to say a guy I kind of want to say is Ryan Blackwell, but I don't think that's the case. Preston Shumpert's got to be one of them.
Preston Shumpert's a very good guess. 20.7 points a game as a senior.
Okay, so now that's 6. We got 3 more to go.
I'm not even keeping track. There's 2 more that I would like for you to get. Both senior numbers that will be in excess of what Rakeem Christmas will finish the season at.
Hey, what about Ronnie Cycli?
Incorrect. Ronnie Cycli, as a senior, averaged 16.3.
I think C.J. Fair is a decent guess, but I don't think I would guess he averaged like 16 something.
16 exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
think back early 90s.
Early 90s. So
one of the most underrated Syracuse Orangemen of the Boeheim era.
Well, now you got me intrigued. Not LaRon Ellis.
Not LaRon Ellis, no.
Most underrated guys at Boeheim's.
We've talked about him recently on the show, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Dave Syock?
In trivia, he came up. No, not Dave Syock.
Jeez. Late 90s.
This guy's senior year was 1992.
Senior year in 92, right as Wallace was coming in. So Wallace was a freshman when
First straddled the Wallace and Moten eras.
Otis Hill?
Or Wallace and Coleman eras, I meant to say.
Yeah, it couldn't be Otis Hill or Conrad McRae. They didn't score that much.
This guy averaged over 19 a game as a junior and a senior.
And I'm having trouble coming up with his name. How sad is that? At the risk of getting frozen into the studio tonight, I'm going to have to ask for some help here.
From Morgan City, Louisiana.
Oh, Dave Johnson, of course.
Dave Johnson, one of the most underrated Syracuse Orangemen of all
time. So underrated, I couldn't even remember him.
That guy could play.
Yeah.
I know, that's exactly evidence of his underratedness.
Dave Johnson.
And then one more senior who will have averaged more than Christmas.
In the Boeheim era.
In the Boeheim era, his senior year was 2007.
Would he have played then along with Devendorf and Flynn and Harris?
Yes.
2007, that would put him right around the old Terrence Robert, Darrell Watkins era, too.
Precisely.
And it wasn't Roberts or Watkins, that's for sure, right?
Right. So who else from that infamous class?
Not Louis McCroskey. Oh, Demetrius Nichols.
Right.
Wow.
Correct. 18.9 points a game as a senior.
Huh. Well, that's pretty impressive that Rakeem is in that company of these guys we mentioned.
Right. If the season ended today, he would finish slightly ahead of Todd Bergen, who averaged 17.6 as a senior. So, that's a pretty good top 10 right there.
Yeah.
Era seniors.
Especially when you consider that we are not scoring as many points as we did back then as a team.
Right.
We've all of a sudden evolved into this low scoring.
Well, and you think about the good seniors we've had since. I mean, C.J. Fair, Rick Jackson, Chris Joseph.
Yeah, Warinze Onuaku, Andy Routins.
Yeah. Some very quality players that Christmas will be on a pretty elite list ahead of.
So is there pre-Boeheim guys that we didn't name?
There's a few, yeah. Obviously, obviously Dave Bing, you mentioned. Greg Coles averaged 26.7 as a senior in 1972.
Greg Coles.
And Rudy Hackett in 75 in the Final Four season averaged 22.2 as a senior.
Wow. And that's the full list.
That's the full list of seniors.
Hey, I got to hand to you, Brad. That's great trivia tonight. I don't know where you pulled that one out from, but I liked it. It was good. Good job.
Stuff.
Well, coming up on 10:56 Eastern time here on a Sunday night, let's move ahead to the list segment. And I want to know, for no particular reason other than we're talking Syracuse hoops, your top 5 most disappointing Orangemen of all time. And why don't you give one of your top 5, and then I'll give one of my top 5, and we'll go right down the list. And I'll let you start.
I'd say one guy that comes to mind pretty quickly is Josh Wright. Came in with a lot of acclaim, local guy from Utica, and he did nothing and flamed out so quickly.
Yeah, he did. Ended up in Canada for a while. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even have him on my list, but I should have. He's probably one of them. But I'll lead you off with my number. I'm going to go 5-1. I'm going to start at 5 and go with Fab Melo. And the reason why is obvious. He's still having detrimental effects on our program now, but as good as he made our team when he was on the court defensively, he killed us. He ruined our chances in the NCAA tournament by not being eligible. Got into all sorts of trouble when he was here, and was gone in 2 years. Very disappointing. That guy was supposed to be like the next Mello.
Yeah, I can't imagine you can find too many Syracuse fans anywhere that look back fondly at the words Fab Melo.
No, absolutely not. Well, so okay, give me another one of your guys.
Louis McCroskey.
You know what?
Came in on that post national championship era team, and we talked about there's a few of those guys that could probably make this list. But he's another guy flamed out. He had to transfer. He transferred to Manhattan or something.
Marist.
It was Marist. It was just a struggle for him from the beginning. Couldn't shoot, couldn't play. He was on that list last week that I mentioned of the guys that shot under 25%. It's just never really got anything done here.
Yeah, he was kind of an idiot. I'll come back at you then with a couple of his teammates, and I put these guys together as one, and that's the front court of Terrence Roberts and Darryl Watkins. And a lot of people will disagree with me on this one. They'll say, "Oh no, the most disappointing of all time," but oh man, those guys were terrible.
Darryl Watkins was an NBA guy somehow, but man, I don't know how if you'd seen his 4 years at Syracuse.
I can only give a little credit to Watkins because he went from a terrible, terrible, worst free throw shooter ever to come to Syracuse, which is saying a lot, to by his senior year being capable. So he showed a little bit of improvement there, but boy, those guys were so frustrating. Watkins, remember how Watkins just couldn't dunk it? You know how many dunks that guy missed?
Yeah, I know. He's like 6'10".
That whole era was the most disappointing.
I never understood because Terrence Roberts played for Bob Hurley at St. Anthony in New Jersey, and guys like that you just always expect to be hard-nosed, play hard, fundamentally sound, and man, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, that whole era was disappointing after the national championship. It's another example. Hey, we got these great recruits coming in. We got this Terrence Robertson. He's a left-hander, maybe the next Coleman. Darryl Watkins, Louis McCroskey. We're gonna enter a golden age. Very disappointing. So, all right, give me another one, Brad.
As much as we remember him fondly for various things, but just in terms of what could have been, Paul Harris.
I thought about putting Harris on here, and the reason I didn't is because I think that a lot of the disappointment came from overhyped, and that's not Paul Harris's fault. I think Paul Harris
probably true.
Played good for us, and when I think of Paul Harris, I think of the 6 overtime game, and I agree, disappointment from what was expected. He was one of Boeheim's doghouse guys. But I
never left it. 3 years, he never left the doghouse.
But I fondly remember Paul Harris for the most part. I really do. But
yeah, I don't don't disagree with that. I remember him mostly fondly, but I do think, you think of the guy, that Niagara Falls team with he and Johnny Flynn, and I mean that was a legendary New York State high school team, and Harris was the guy that had all the hype, and he was supposed to be the NBA guy, and a bit undersized, but I think they just he had just a motor that wouldn't stop, and could throw down on anybody, and he had everybody trying to get him.
I thought about putting Flynn on this list, Brad. I actually thought about putting Flynn on this list because he was here for 2 years, no NCAA tournament, and gone. But I couldn't do it. He was too great of a player. I mean, he was phenomenal. The 6 overtime game alone is enough to keep him off any type of this list.
Right.
But yeah, that's the same thing. That pair, coming still in the shadow of that national championship team, had a ton of talent and didn't make the tournament. Flynn's 2 years he was here, which was amazing. Which brings me to my next guy, former teammate of Johnny Flynn. That's Dante Green. Very disappointing to me, only because he started all the dynasty talk. The dynasty and the worst defender maybe ever to play at Syracuse, and then to come in and just be gone in 1 year. I know that guy. I wish we never recruited him in the first place. I wish he never played for Syracuse. So he's on my list of top 5. Dante Green.
That was a guy. I mean, he came from Baltimore. There was comparisons with Carmelo, and he just. I don't think he ever had any desire to be a great Syracuse player. He just was
passing through,
putting his time in until he could get to the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Just passing through. Who's your next guy? We got
Those
2 more each. 2 more each. And so far we haven't doubled up on anybody, which is kind of amazing.
No. Tells you that we could make a pretty long list out of this.
A lot of disappointment.
Yeah. I would say, as much as I enjoyed watching him from time to time, Mookie Jones has got to be on a list like this, right?
Yeah, he's not on my list, but I can certainly see why he would be on there. Mookie Jones.
I mean, he's a legend in his own mind, but he could shoot it, but man, he did not give one crap about playing defense, and wasn't really a great team guy. He just kind of did his thing.
Yeah, it's a typical case of a guy who thinks he's better than he is and doesn't work to get better because he thinks he's already there. I think that's what my take on Mookie Jones is. Hey, my number 2 guy. I have a funny feeling our number 1 guy might be the same, but we'll wait and see. My number 2 guy is Earl Duncan. And a lot of it's not his fault. He was heralded as the next Pearl, mainly because his name maybe rhymed with him. But I just remember here, back when we were maybe 5th or so, we were probably 7th, 8th grade. And we hear Earl Duncan's coming, he's going to be the next Pearl. And, well, guess what? We already had a guy named Sherman Douglas, and before long, Earl Duncan was off to Rutgers as a transfer. And for a guy who was supposed to be the next Pearl, he has 0 legacy at Syracuse. So I got Earl Duncan on my list.
It's funny with Earl Duncan, there was a bit of mystery about him, too, because he was a California guy. And, Syracuse had great success with getting Stevie Thompson out of California.
Yep.
And I think there was just always that, hey, West Coast guys, man, we get these guys in the Dome, and then it's just on, and that's what we thought we were going to get with Earl Duncan, and no, it didn't happen.
Yeah, so who's you got 2 guys left. Oh, no, you got 1 guy left on your list. Who is it?
Yeah, so I will admit I went away from all the guys you have, and I know who you got for number 1, and I don't think anybody would disagree with the number 1 guy on your list, but so I will let you go with that. But I've got 1 more guy on my list. He's not the most disappointing by any means, but he's one that I fear will make these lists in perpetuity, and that's Dajuan Coleman.
Oh man, I hope you're wrong.
He's
really pulling for him.
I'm wrong too. I really do. He's a hard luck guy, but man, he came in with as much hype as anybody's coming to this program.
Recruited by
years.
Kentucky as well.
It's one injury after another, and even when he was healthy, I don't think he was disappointing to a degree because we used to joke about how he couldn't. He's 6'10", 280, and every little guard could knock the ball out of his hands when he's going up for a shot. And that was always a struggle when he was healthy, even. And who knows what we're going to get when he comes back next year, if he comes back next year. But
yeah,
I'm wrong. But I would say on the basis of the 2 years, 2 or 3 years, I guess that we've had him. 2 years, 3. I couldn't even tell you now.
This was his 3rd year.
Would have expected.
This was his third year at Syracuse. He was New York State Mr. Basketball in 2011, I think. Does that sound right? Or no?
Because he did play a full freshman year, and then he got injured halfway through his sophomore year, and then the junior year never happened. So, yeah, you're right.
Oh, boy. Well, hoping that he's not on your list a couple of years from now. But right now I can see why you put him on there. But number one on my list is one of my most despised Orangemen of all time, and that's Deshaun Williams, the guy who, in my mind, single-handedly derailed a decent team in Preston Shumpert's senior year just by being a jerk.
Yeah, he could have been so much more. He was a selfish player, didn't really care about the team. Was a bad guy off the court, got into trouble. Ended up transferring to Iona, and then he flamed out of there too. Like, I think he got kicked off that team.
You're
too.
right. He did. He did okay for a while, but he's not a good teammate. Deshaun.
Mm-hmm. Well, some guys aren't.
I wonder where
don't have him on your team, but
yeah. And I guess one reason that is so disappointing because he certainly had the talent to be a great player. He reminded me a lot of Deion Waiters, actually. That type of talent. But
yeah, both bringing their own baggage to the court too.
Right. So there you go. There's in this winter doldrums of no postseason. Let's talk about more disappointment. Well, I don't know why I want to do it to myself, but memories of disappointing players. But that brings us to two for the road before we get out of here. And this is one question that I'm a little concerned about. I have this feeling that I would not be surprised or shocked if at some point over the next several months, Boeheim just says, I'm hanging it up. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked. I really think he wants to go till 1,000 at least, and he still has that competitive fire. But with all the crap this season with the NCAA and Bernie Fine, and I wouldn't be shocked if Boeheim was to out of nowhere in mid-April say, I'm hanging it up, retiring. What do you think? Is that crazy talk?
I disagree with you. I would be shocked because I do think he's got that thousand win number in the back of his head, and if he's not there, I think it's a bit of a unfinished business. I think a little bit, and he's still got a passion for it. He's still got a fire for it. I don't see him. It just doesn't seem like it's him to just sort of walk away, And I don't. With the group that he's got coming in, I think this season will have left a very sour taste in his mouth that I don't think he would want to end on this kind of note.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I don't know what it is. I just got this feeling. That it could be a possibility where, even a couple months ago, I wouldn't have thought that for a second. So. Nothing based on that other than just this kind of sick feeling. Maybe it's just all the bad news this winter with surrounding Syracuse. But let's hope not. I really don't think so. I just would not be shocked. I would be a little surprised, but not shocked. I think I don't know why, but I agree. He probably wants the 1,000. Who wouldn't when you get that close?
Yeah, if you've been that far.
Although, who is it? Bobby Knight that was like 1 or 2 wins shy of 1,000. He was very close, but not by his choice, right? He was ousted from Indiana and then Texas Tech.
Then Texas Tech, yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to
get rid of Jim Boeheim.
Yeah, let's go to two for the road, number 2, and that's we need predictions. We got 2 games this week. Louisville coming to the Dome, Pitt coming to the Dome. If we want any shot at 20-win season, we better win both of these games. Right? Not just one. One's probably not good enough. These are 2 of our – we have 3 home games remaining, and 2 of them are coming up this week. Wednesday, 7 o'clock on ESPN against Louisville, and then Saturday at noon against Pitt on the ACC Digital Network. I need predictions. Let's start with Louisville.
I don't like Syracuse's chances in this game. I do expect it to be low scoring, and in some of these Syracuse Louisville games we've seen over the last several years, that they're always low scoring. You got Pitino knows how to attack that zone, but it just grinds the game to a halt, and so those types of games can come down to one or two possessions, and so I do think that Syracuse has a decent chance in this game, but I just think Louisville is a better team. I think they've got better guard play. I think they're a little bit more.
NC State knocked them off this week, right? Didn't NC State knock off Louisville? NC State knocked off Louisville.
NC State beat them at home at Louisville.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm going with the Syracuse.
So, yeah, I mean that's there's a chance there, but I think Louisville 62-58.
Syracuse 75, Louisville 68. Okay.
All right.
Pitt coming to the Dome. What do you think about this one? Now, Pitt just beat North Carolina, so it's crazy ACC, I guess. I'll
tell you what, if Syracuse expects to win 20 games, this is the game they absolutely positively have to have.
It's the only one on the season.
Game on the slate between now and the end of the season.
It's the only one they're probably going to be favored in.
Probably right.
Maybe Louisville might be close to a pick, but Pitt, I think, other than that, we're not going to be favored when we host Virginia, and we're certainly not going to be favored for any of these road games, even NC State. So you're right. It is a must-win, so that's why I think we're going to win a low-scoring affair. We're going to pull this one out. It's going to be close, as all Syracuse-Pitt games in the Dome tend to be. They sometimes kill us in Pitt, but I'm going to say 56-54. Syracuse wins.
Okay. I think in this one I do like Syracuse in this game. I like it a little bit higher scoring. It was close to in the 80s last time, so I think Syracuse 76-71.
All right. Good. Well, we agree on that.
We need it.
Well, we'll be back, Brad, next Sunday to talk about those two games, and then also preview Notre Dame and the second game at Duke. The way I'm looking at it here, we have 1, 2, 3 more episodes of this podcast left before we hang it up, because when Syracuse game at NC State comes to a close, so does their season, and the next day we'll have our final episode of the podcast. Normally we've gone straight through to early April, but this year we're cutting it short. What else are we going to talk? What are we going to talk about? What's really disappointing is we don't get to do the Selection Sunday show this year that we've enjoyed doing in past a couple of years.
We can't do an ACC tournament preview show.
Yeah, all that.
Well, let's talk about that.
So we're just going to hang it. We're going just like Syracuse. We're going away for the month of March, unfortunately. But we will be back next year with renewed expectations and hopefully this NCAA stuff behind us. But it's sad but true, Brad. Sad but true. But of course, we had no problem filling an hour here without Verk, and even when with us on probation and no talk about tournament bubble or any of that, we still can talk Cuse basketball we could probably go a second hour if we want. But it is getting late here on Sunday night, so thanks for hanging out again tonight, Brad. And next week we'll be back with Verk and hopefully talking about 2 Syracuse wins.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, thanks to everybody for hanging out with us tonight on the Upstate Orange Podcast. You can subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher.com, on YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at podcast.fingerlakes1.com/upstatehoops. And we'll be back again next Sunday night at 10 o'clock. So for the professor, Brad Connor, and Matt Verkey, who's not here tonight, I'm Jim Sinacropi. Have a great week, and let's go Orange.